I'm here with Ranger West. He pulled me over because I was cycling on the sidewalk. He really didn't pull me over, but he told me not to cycle on the sidewalk and just to walk it. And then I got talking to him about this misconception that I have that Yosemite is the first national park, and he was explaining to me, so I asked him if he'd explain it to you guys, so here he is. Well, good morning. Back on the road. Great night here at this campground, Lake Catherine. Met some wonderful people, and I only have like maybe 20 miles to get to Hot Springs and see what the whole entire national park's ordeal is there. Plenty of climbing to get to Hot Springs. Steep hills too. Bike path here in Hot Springs goes all the way to downtown. It's called the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail, and it's nice. Going slow because there's plenty of people walking with their dogs, their kids, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. Beautiful city trail and next to a creek. Beautiful place to draw people to come get some exercise and be outside for a little while. This city's covered in art, either murals or sculptures all over the park and everywhere. Very fun to ride around in. I'm here with Ranger West. He pulled me over because I was cycling on the sidewalk. He really didn't pull me over, but he told me not to cycle on the sidewalk and just to walk it. And then I got talking to him about this misconception that I have that Yosemite is the first national park, and he was explaining to me, so I asked him if he'd explain it to you guys, so here he is.
You know, part of the question about what is the oldest national park has to do with what is a national park. Is it the name? Is it something that you see? Is it a resource that we experience in a certain way? And so I'm going to sort of highlight 3 different early parks to try to figure out where Hot Springs could fit in that. So Hot Springs is set aside in 1832 as Hot Springs Reservation. And the legislation is very vague. It basically just says that no private entity can own this land. It has to be for the public. It has to be, and it's implied that it's public use, using the water as a medical resource. So since 1832, we've been a federally managed site using that water as a medical resource. And that's the first time in the history of the United States that the federal government has said that this natural resource has a public good and a public use. Fast forward to the 1850s, you're going to have legislation that creates Yosemite as a state park. But in that writing for Yosemite as a state park, there's sort of language. It talks about parks, like these natural spaces as parks, as playgrounds for the people, as a sort of implied a way to get out of the city. And it's big, beautiful, amazing scenery. This is slightly different from Hot Springs, which is not about the scenery. It's about the natural resource as a public consumption good. And then in 1872, with the establishment of Yellowstone National Park, that's the first time that the national park name is affixed to something. So Yellowstone is certainly the first place called a national park. Its establishing language embodies this sense of parks as for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. And in many cases, our great Western parks follow the Yellowstone model, that they are these huge, scenic, grand places where your soul is lit from awe. Hot Springs stays in a niche. You don't see many parks that follow the Hot Springs model, which is about natural resources for public well-being. But arguably, if you look at the 1916 establishment of the Organic Act of the National Park Service, it will name Hot Springs National Park. And all the earliest publications will say Hot Springs National Park, the first national park. But by the 1920s, as the Park Service is now established, it doesn't need Hot Springs and its infrastructure to validate sort of the management of natural places. then Hot Springs gets sort of pushed to the wayside, and we really emphasize Yellowstone as being the beginning of the park. Man, explore this country. This is awesome.
If I can, and got on the road. Guy and I talked for like an hour. Very informative. Left the city behind. Just south of me, not too far. It's only like a half a mile where I got a motel room. I really like what I've seen so far. The only issue I have is that my bottom bracket's making noise again. I think it's shot. So I gotta try to figure it out tomorrow. It's a nice descent from the Golden Motel where I'm staying. I definitely have some bicycle issues with my cassette, so I'm gonna wait until tomorrow. They don't have bike shops here on Monday. It's all Tuesdays. So I'm heading to town and just see what I can absorb from Hot Springs. I had this water yesterday afternoon. I put it in my fridge, and once it got cold, I started tasting it because I had tasted it hot. It was good, but once it was cold, it was like amazing. It was unbelievable. It's a source here for locals and for people like me coming through that is so valuable, I think. It's called the Grand Promenade. It's not a bicycle path. It's a half a mile walk behind the bathhouses. It's really pretty, but they don't allow cycling. Half a mile of walking. What did I get myself into here? Then here's one of the springs coming out. I'm heading back to the Bathhouse Road and checking out the Fordyce House, which is their museum. These are all the bathhouses, and they've been converted to a brewery where they do beer from water that comes out of the springs at like 140 degrees.
Oh, yeah, that's hot. We found that out.
Woo! And other ones are in the museum, and 2 are supposedly operational, even though only 1 supposedly is working right now. Back in the 1910s to the 1940s, it was fashionable to recreate by taking baths in hot springs like this one, especially because it was close to Chicago and New York. And they fashioned it to be a high-end resort style with hotels and architecture that would draw people from the bigger cities to come enjoy the hot springs and the spas that were here. The maximum amount of water that these springs can provide is 650,000 gallons of water per day. It's not heated by a volcano like most places, and those waters would have levels of sulfur and other minerals in it, where this one doesn't. This water is 4,500 years old, and it's heated by a geothermal gradient, which means the water is below the surface by about a mile, and then it shoots back up through cracks or faults in the geology of the landscape here. This water also has these thermophiles, which are heat-loving organisms, ostracods, nanobacteria, and algae, and they're completely fine to drink. The water comes out of the ground at 143 degrees, and it contains small amounts of silica, calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium, so it's a rich water. All right, I've drank the water, I've collected the water, I've taken a look at the museum, and now I'm going to the Quapaw baths to get into the hot springs. is awesome. I'm at the 95-degree one, and I'll be working my way down to the 3 other ones. One's 104 degrees. I thought I was gonna be in there maybe 15 minutes, but like 2.5 hours went by, and I was just like, this is awesome. The longer you stay in there, the more you want to stay. And now I'm starving. Let's see where I can get some food and get back on the bicycle at some point. I'm missing pedaling. Leaving the Gold Inn Motel. I got a half a mile in the rain to get to a bike shop. My drivetrain's a disaster, and I'm hoping that they help me today. I came in here at 10:30, Spa City Cycles in Hot Springs, and Walter was here by himself. He's the tech. He's totally willing to help me out.
You know, you think you hit the button, and then you make this killer run, and then you get off the bike, and you're like, oh.
I'm stuck in Hot Springs. I have an issue with my bike, and I can't figure it out. I spent 6 hours at a bike shop yesterday with a guy taking my entire bike apart, and we just could not figure out why there's this clicking noise. It's not the bottom bracket, it's not the pedals, it's not the cassette or the rear hub, it's not the seat post, it's not the seat post clamp, it's not the headset, it's not the front hub. We also tried new chain, tightening the rotors and making sure everything's aligned with the calipers and the rotors, tightening every bolt, tightening the spider nut on the crank, adjusting all the derailleurs and looking into them, making sure they're straight, making sure that the derailleur hanger is straight to the wheel. I keep going around in circles in the parking lot trying to figure out, and I can't make it do the noise so I can really pinpoint where it's at. I've never come to a halt like this. I'm, as you can tell, pretty frustrated. Anyways, that's where I'm at. I think I got it figured out. It's the crankset. All I gotta do is find a new one now. I'm loving these downhills on this bike. It is so smooth. This bike is one steady, not wobbly rocket ship.